Hey beautiful people, welcome to already the second episode of Part of My World, where today we will unravel the Disney movie that saved the studios in 1950, Cinderella. So the same thing applies for this episode. I will guide you to 3 chapters, where in the first chapter I will give you a recap of the Disney movie so it's fresh in your memory. In the same chapter we will discuss the differences between the original fairy tale and the Disney movie. In the second episode, it's trivia time and I will give you all nice facts about the making of the movie. And in the third chapter, I will tell you about my own opinion about the movie. So without further ado, let's dive into the world of Cinderella. We start the movie with a prologue where the narrator tells us that Cinderella's father remarried with Lady Tremaine, who has 2 daughters. But not shortly after, Cinderella's father dies and she's left alone with the evil stepmother and sisters. Cinderella is being bullied and humiliated and needs to serve as a maid in her own house. We then zoom in on Cinderella's room where she's sleeping and she's being awakened by the birds. She wakes up cheerful as ever, singing a song, because since when don't Disney princesses sing songs? The mice come to tell her a mouse is trapped. She rushes to him, calls him Gus, and is ready to make breakfast for her stepmother and sisters. In a scene after this, we see the king organizing a ball for his son who did not find a wife yet. The invitation of the ball is delivered and Cinderella asks Lady Tremaine if she is allowed to go. Lady Tremaine says yes if she finishes all of her chores. At the last second, the mice finish Cinderella's dress and she's able to go to the ball. The stepsisters see that she used their material, which they didn't even want anymore, and they rip Cindy's dress to shreds. Cindy runs away crying and finds her fairy godmother. She gives her a new dress, bibbidi bobbidi boos her pumpkin in a carriage, and off Cindy goes. The fairy godmother wants her to be back at 12 o'clock before the magic disappears. The prince finds Cinderella a very attractive young woman and dances only with her. When the clock strikes midnight, Cinderella runs back home, but of course leaves her glass slipper on the stairs. The Grand Duke starts to visit girls in all the land to find the food that will fit into the glass slipper. Meanwhile, the evil stepmother discovers that Cinderella was the girl that the prince danced with, and she locks Cinderella in her room. Anastasia and Drizella, her stepsisters, try on the glass slipper, but you can see from a mile away that her huge feet won't ever fit in the glass slipper anyway. Cinderella is freed by Jack and Gus, her mice friends, and the glass slipper is broken because Lady Tremaine lets the royal attendant slip. Cinderella proves she's the one by revealing she has the other slipper. It fits and she marries the prince and all is well. So the Cinderella story has been around since Greek-Roman times, so for thousands of years. And this story is called Rhodopis, which is about a Greek slave girl who marries the king of Egypt. There's also a Chinese version of the story known as Yexian, and it's been found around 860 AD. The first European version of the story was penned down by the Italian writer Basile, and it's called Cinderella, and follows the same trope of the story. For this comparison, I'm going to mostly focus on Charles Perrault's version called Cinderella ou la petite pantoufle de fer and Grimm's Aschenputtel. So it's very clear that the Disney movie was based on the Perrault's version of the story, and it even says so in the beginning credits. You should look it up. The only big difference in Perrault's version that isn't in the Disney movie is basically that the ball is like 3 days long and she visits the ball for 3 days in a row, and on the 3rd day she loses her slipper. But I thought it was more interesting to look at the Grimm version of the story and how that's differences from Perrault's version, because the Grimm version was published in 1812 for the first time, and honestly the story was altered massively, so that's where we are going to look now. So the first big difference of the movie is that her father doesn't die. In fact, he stays alive for the whole story, And the fairy tale explains why Cinderella never told her father of the abuse, and that was because he would have scolded her because he himself was very scared of his second wife. Cinderella often cries at her mother's grave. Her father goes to visit a fair. He asks what Cinderella wants, and she answers that she wants the first twig that knocks his head off on his way to the fair. So it turns out to be a hazel twig that knocks her father's head off, and he gives Cinderella the hazel twig, which she plants with her mother's grave. She gives it water, and it grows out to a full grown hazel tree. There's also white birds in the tree, and Cinderella tells them her wishes, and they grant them to her and drop down whatever she wishes for. Also in the Grimm version, there are 3 days and nights of celebration, and it's called in this story a festival. And Cinderella really wants to go, but her stepmother of course refuses. Cinderella doesn't give up, but the evil woman throws lentils in the ashes and tells Cinderella that she has to pick them all up in 2 hours, and if she does this, she's allowed to go to the ball. So what we see next is that the birds help Cinderella. She even finishes the task in 1 hour instead of 2. So she goes to the stepmother and says, "Look, stepmother, I did it. I finished the task." But again, the stepmother refuses and throws even more lentils in the fire and gives her an hour to do this task. Again, Cinderella does the task in less than an hour with help from her bird friends. But this time the stepmother grabs her daughters and her husband and goes to the ball anyway without Cinderella and leaving her behind. So Cindy goes after that to her mother's tree, and she cries in front of the tree. And she asks for a beautiful gold and silver dress, which the birds are able to drop off. And the next part after that is basically the same. She goes to the ball, dances only with the prince. Her stepmother and sisters and even own father don't recognize her. And at the third day, she loses her golden slipper. Not glass slipper, but golden slipper. So the prince proclaims to marry the girl who fits the golden slipper, and in this version he himself goes to all of the houses in all the land to try on the golden slipper at any girl who wants to try it. Here's when things get gory though, because he arrives at Cinderella's house and the eldest stepsister is going to fit on the slipper, but her mother told her own daughter to cut off her toes so she would fit into the golden slipper. The prince thinks he found the one. He gets on his horse with the elder stepsister and he rides with her to his palace. The birds, however, warn the prince about all the blood that is dripping from the girl's foot. He sees this and is appalled, and he takes her back to the house, and it's there that he lets the youngest stepsister also try on the slipper, but she cut off her heel to fit into the golden slipper. And again, you would think once bitten, twice shy, but again the prince takes her on his horse to his palace. Again, the birds warn him about the girl's foot bleeding, and he takes her back again, and it's then he hears about Cinderella, and that's when she fits the slipper, and you would think everything is good, they marry, but no. The last part of the story is gory as well, because on the wedding, Cinderella's stepsisters are bridesmaids because they want to get on her good side, but the birds see this true and they fly down and they pick the girl's eyes out, blinding them in the progress, so they are punished for all the horrible deeds they've done. It's never dull with these original fairy tales, is it? To trivia time. So the first trivia is a pretty sad one, but also one that's kind of hopeful. I thought it would fit perfectly into the story of Cinderella, so that's why I wanted to include it anyway. So Eileen Woods, who is the voice of Cinderella, she suffered from Alzheimer's disease in her later life, and during this she did not even remember that she voiced Cinderella, but the nurses claimed that she was very much comforted by the song "A Dream Is a Wish Your Heart Makes." So this actually brought tears to my eyes. Eileen Woods beat exactly 309 girls for the part of Cinderella. So she had no idea she was recording for the Disney role, but her friend sent the recording to Disney without her knowing. The transformation of Cinderella into her ball gown was Walt Disney's favorite piece of animation. So Lucifer was modeled after Walt Kimball's own cat. In the beginning, Walt Kimball had very much trouble with finding the perfect design for an evil cat, and one day Walt Disney came to Walt Kimball's house to discuss the stuff of animation and the movie, and Kimball's cat was constantly rubbing off against Walt's legs, and Walt apparently wasn't a big fan of cats, so he declared to Kimball, "For gosh sakes, Kimball, there's your Lucifer right there." So, excluding the prologue and the wedding scene, the main story takes place approximately around 24 hours. Cinderella starts the day with doing her chores, the ball is the same night, and the next day she tries on the slipper. And I never even thought about this. So, as I already mentioned in the beginning, Cinderella saved the Disney Studios from bankruptcy, meaning if the movie wasn't a hit, then we wouldn't have a Disney Studios nowadays, which is crazy because they own almost everything now that has to do with movies. Marvel, Star Wars, 20th Century Fox. This was the first Disney film that was worked on by all the legendary 9 old men. According to Mark Davis, one of the director's animators, at least 90% was done in a live action model before animation, so they did this to keep the cost lower. Cinderella was the first Disney movie to have its songs published and copyrighted by the Walt Disney Music Company. Eileen Stanley, who was the live action model for Cindy, was also the live action model for Aurora and Anita. Verna Felton, who does the voice of the fairy godmother, can also be heard in Dumbo, Alice in Wonderland, Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty, and The Jungle Book. Eleanor Audley was both the voice of Lady Tremaine, but also her live action model. I hope you liked those trivia and facts. Of course, like I already mentioned in the first episode, there are tons and tons of more trivia and facts, but I can't include them all. So if you want to know more, look them up. Now, off to chapter 3, my opinion. So, Cinderella is a movie very dear to my heart because it was the first Disney princess movie I watched. And I could watch in full because, yeah, the evil stepmother is scary in here, but not as creepy that I couldn't watch it. So, the movie is just very memorable for many scenes that just stick by you as a kid and even as an adult. For example, the Sweet Nightingale scene and the stepsister who rips Cinderella's dress to pieces, or like Cinderella's transformation in her ball gown. And the sidekicks like always make up for good fun and good humor, and I think they did such a good job with the gorgeous backgrounds as well, like the castle and the ballroom and even Cinderella's own house and the hallway and that. They look beautiful. The songs are considered classics for a reason, and it's a Disney movie I love very much. So I thank you for watching the second episode of Part of My World. Don't forget to like the video. Let's get this video at least 8 likes. That would mean the world to me. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to follow me, and especially don't forget to click on the notification bell if you want to know when I upload. And stay healthy, stay safe, take care, and I will see you at the next Part of My World. Bye bye.